just thank you all so much for making the time to do some learning together, and the opportunity to hear from our extended family, our extended Temple Beth Israel community. I'm Rabbi Allison Solomon, and I'm our rabbi educator here. And Diane Schechter is here as well, and is also part of the Community Education Committee. And there are several of us who work together to create educational opportunities for our local community and our extended community. And we have a great zchut, a great privilege today to hear from one of our elders, who is the mother of one of our leaders at the Temple Beth Israel community. So Zara Greenleaf is part of our Talmud Torah Advisory Committee, and has been a part of so many learning opportunities. And she told us about her incredible mother and the book that she had written, a collection of poems. So we're gathered today to learn and listen and celebrate the life and legacy of someone very special. So thank you all for being here. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Diane. Just a quick note, a little bit about the choreography. We'll have about an hour together to learn and hear some poems and ask some questions. This opportunity is being recorded, so if you want to view it again or share it with someone, you'll be able to. It'll be available on the TBI YouTube channel. And there's going to be a PowerPoint. We're really grateful. Diane has put together a PowerPoint, so you'll be able to read the poems along with Esther reading them to us. And if you want to see Esther and the poem, what I would suggest you just practice doing for a moment is up in the right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a view, little box of dots. And there's a way to view side by side. You probably won't see the option yet until we do the screen share, but eventually there'll be an option to see speaker and side by side. So that's what you'll want to hit to be able to see Esther reading the poem and also to see the poem. Does that make sense for everybody? So you'll go up to the view in the upper right and hit the side by side speaker and view to be able to see both Esther and the poem. We'll ask that folks mute if you're not speaking. And I believe there'll be some time for questions near the end, but really today it's all Esther. So I'll turn it over to Diane to welcome everybody, and then Sarah to introduce. So thank you all for being together.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Solomon. And thank you everyone for joining us. Like I want to introduce Zara Faye Greenleaf, who is a member of our synagogue for many years and is a member of the Talmud Torah Committee and teaches Talmud Torah, and is also a member of the Sanctuary Committee. And she was, like Rabbi Solomon had mentioned, she's the one who brought Esther's book to our attention and basically took it upon herself to kind of facilitate getting this to be part of our offering. So thank you, Zara Faye. And I'm going to let Zara introduce her mom.
Okay. Thanks, Diane. This is super fun to be sharing with my community here and also some other family from throughout the whole US. So thank you. I know you worked hard to pull it together also. It means a lot to me. And thank you also for Rabbi Solomon for holding the space. Okay, so for nearly a century, my mother, Esther Adler, has tuned her sensitive eye and heart to the life around her. From her early years in Nazi Germany to her youth in Israel, to adulthood in the US, she has transformed the essence of her observations into fine-tuned poetry. And even with this new year, almost every day, I'm getting a new poem from her in the email. It's like, it doesn't stop. In addition to her prolific creative work as a writer, Esther has served as an educator, developing curriculum for the Jewish National Fund and working with students ranging in age from preschool to adult. She has been the inspiration for my lifelong career in education. For her presentation today, Esther will share writings from the 3 sections of her book on the themes of sorrow, solace, and spirituality. Some poems note powerful life-changing events, while others illuminate the meaning of everyday occurrences. I invite you to open your ears and heart to receive the unique gift of her memorable words. Thank you, and thank you for coming.
Now, I have to first thank you. I will start with the rabbi. We have to do it properly. And it's nice to meet you, not quite in person, but I have heard about you. And you have a baby, correct?
Yes.
There you go. So I remember what I hear. Diane, I remember meeting you in Oregon and in Florida.
In Florida, right?
And of course, my daughter, Faye, she's an exceptional educator as well. And when I hear about her, I said, I guess she's taking after her mother. The only thing she doesn't do is yet write poetry, but it may come at an older age, Faye. So I really want to thank you for inviting me. And as Faye has, and you don't mind if I say Faye because that's what I'm used to, has pointed out, this book came about as a recollection of my life. Because whenever people ask me, so where do you come from? I always say I come from 3 different people, 3 different countries, 3 different languages. And so the poems in the book were not specifically written for this book. They were written over the period of years, but I felt that they really reflect my life. And so I started putting them together. And as always, I have to give credit to my son, Andy, and my daughter-in-law, Annie, who actually undertook this to put it into a book, because I only had all these poems. And while I'm good at writing poetry, I'm not that great at the computer. I must admit it. And besides, I just don't have all the talents that Anne and Andy have. And so they promised me as my last year's birthday present that the book will be together. And it sort of happened. And I can't be more pleased with it. So I want to give you a short overview of my life so that you understand the 3 sections of the book better. I was born in Germany. My parents had come from Poland to Germany, and they came there in order to find a better way of making a living. But they were very traditional, and they were among the founders of the Jewish day school in the city. I can't see myself on the screen, but I guess, I see myself in the corner. Anyway, so it was a great opportunity for me to go to Jewish day school because I loved the Torah, I loved the language, which I furthered by going to the Jewish Theological Seminary later in order to learn Sfaradi, because in the school we did Ashkenazis, which I didn't like that much. And very, very important, we were Zionists. I always say that I was Zionist when I was still in my mother's womb. And so it was not Medinat Israel, it was Eretz Israel, was always part of my life and of my longing. I always saw the Kotel HaMaravi, the Western Wall in front of my eye. I saw palm trees in sunshine, which I had never seen in reality, but somehow I could imagine that. Now, so therefore, I have to tell you, which you all know, that this quiet life changed when Hitler came to power in 1933. And in 1935, we had the Nuremberg laws, where Jewish children were expelled from all public schools. And they tried to join our school, but it was a little bit too crowded. So fortunately, there were classrooms in the community building, because those kids who went to regular school went there for religious schooling. So every space was taken over for children to learn a little bit about our history and had to continue learning about Germany history. When the Nuremberg laws were announced in 1935, life became much more complicated because Jewish families could have no longer help in their home. That slept over when she was over under 18 years or 18 years and over, only 45 years old. The stores were plastered with posters, Aryans do not go in here, Jewish store, Jews go to Palestine. And whenever I saw that, I said, I wish I could go. There were newspapers, the Stürmer it was called, that was just a hideous paper that showed caricatures of Jews and horrible things written about them. And they displayed it in a public space. And for some reason, I was so attracted to read it and say, it can't be true. They can't write that about us. But obviously, that's what they had in mind. And my parents' business started to falter, and I had to help out because, miracle of miracles, I had 3 brothers, and they all looked Jewish, but they called me always the Schicksal because I didn't look Jewish. I had sort of blue-green eyes and blondish hair, and I just didn't look Jewish. So whenever my parents needed help in their business, I had to go in their place. So we tried to get out of Germany when we realized how bad things are going to be. My mother was very, very clever, and we tried. If we wanted to go to Palestine, we couldn't go because the British mandate also limited the number of people who could come in, unless they were very, very rich, which we weren't. We had an opportunity to go to the United States as a family, but if we would have waited for that, we would have all perished because there were numbers according to the place where you were born, and Polish Jews had come in great numbers, Polish, Russian Jews from in like the 1880s, 1890s, in the beginning of the 20th century to the United States. And even then, there were some people here who didn't like immigrants, especially Jewish ones. So we had a problem. Fortunately, my mother had heard that the American consul in Breslau, was the name of the city, because now it's Poland, is eager to receive some money. That means he liked to be bribed. And so I don't know how much money, she obtained a visitor's visa for my father to the United States, which assured us that they wouldn't throw him out. So my first really horrible day in my young life was November 2nd, 1938, when I had to say goodbye to my father at the railroad station. I was 14 years old and, the only daughter, and I clung to him and I cried, but one of my aunts finally took me and said, come, you go with us. I don't want to tell you what happens to Polish Jews because we don't have that much time, but a few days after that was Kristallnacht. And I'm sure most of you know about the Night of the Broken Glass, and I will read a poem for you later, which, again, the phone rang, and people called my mother early in the morning, and they said, send Esther out, let us see what happened, because I did not look Jewish. And I put on my coat, and I walked out. And I didn't have to walk very far, because the largest Reform synagogue, there were 2 very large ones, the Stor Synagogue, which was modern Orthodox. It was established in the 1820s or 30s, and the Reform a few years later. I could hear, smell the burning of the of books, of the parchment of the Torah scrolls, and I just kept on walking. Wherever I was, I could hear that the glasses of the stores had been broken, which happened in our building as well. And everything was looted because the Germans had planned that event. But again, I'm not going to into it because if you want me to talk about the Shoah, I can go into that. So from that moment on, there was no more school. Everything was closed. And I went to the Zionist organization because I had heard about Aliyat Noar or Youth Aliyah, where they would take children and send them to Palestine, to Eretz Israel. She said, I want to go. And she said to me, how old are you? Well, I wasn't 15 yet. She said, you have to come back when you're 15. So in the meantime, I did the next important thing. I obtained a Polish passport because in Germany, it didn't matter that you were born in Germany. It depended on your parents' place of birth. Since they were Polish, I got a Polish passport, which was very, very important. And so I returned until my 15th birthday. And on that day, they said, okay, Esther, how fast can you get to Hamburg? I said, tomorrow, because there was a 4-week camp that we had to attend in order to be eligible or not eligible to go to Eretz Israel. Well, I was smart enough to take my passport with me. I handed it to some big shot from Berlin. And I said, I really, really have to go. And sure enough, when I came out, I said, you'll see, I'll get the papers. And I did. So on April 1, 1939, I was on the way to Eretz Israel, the land of my dreams. For 2 years, I went to a girls' school in Yerushalayim. And that was a big change, but I loved the fact that I was in Yerushalayim. Jerusalem was my dream. Since my childhood, I mentioned that before. There was not a Shabbat afternoon that I did not go to the old city, and I visited the Kotel, the Western Wall. After 2 years, I had to make a decision. What will my life be now that I'm 17 years old? Obviously, my parents could not help me financially, and I certainly didn't have any money after 2 years of school. And so I did the second most desirable place for me is to join a kibbutz. And I lived in kibbutzim for many years, and that was during the years of the Shoah, of what you call the Holocaust. I like the word Shoah better. And while I felt safe there, relatively safe, and there were attacks by Arabs, British, all kinds of things, I felt that the pain of not knowing what is happening with our families in Europe. And actually in Eretz Israel, we knew more about it than people in other countries. So during that period, I didn't really write much poetry, but I do have a essay that I wrote for myself, not for anybody else, just for myself, where I express my feelings in Hebrew. And a miracle happened when I came to the United States. I had it with me so that I could translate it. So this is for future time. I was in the kibbutz 7 years and in Eretz Israel 9 years, total, when my parents asked me to come to the United States, because my mother had arrived in here too, but she had been ill since Germany already. And she was very sick. And my father said, come and you gotta help. So I came to the United States. And as I famously say, I got stuck in the United States. Why did I say stuck? Because my heart was really not here. My heart was in Eretz Israel and then Medinat Israel, the state of Israel. But on the way from Eretz Israel, from Haifa to here, it was a 16-day journey. It was a slow boat, not a luxury ship. I met this guy who kept on looking at me, And if you look at Faye's blue eyes, that's where they came from. So after 16 days, but he had to go to his parents in Colorado, but eventually we got married and we started a family. And once that happened, I actually kept on nudging him, let's go to Israel, but it did not happen. So I took comfort in saying that I devote my life to Jewish education, which I did. And so the poems in the last section of the book are dealing with that kind of life. And we were the founders of a synagogue in Plainview, where we lived, Plainview Jewish Center. When we came finally to Florida, we started another new synagogue, Temple Torah, where I became president. And I said, what do you want from me? I don't know how to be a president, but I did it anyway. So, but this is the period where I absorbed and encountered and lived more spirituality. So that is the third part of my book. The Poems of Sorrow deals with the Shoah. Solace is Eretz Israel, which really meant a great deal to me. And then spirituality the rest of my life. And I promise that I will pick poems from each section. And I think, Diane, do you have some of the picture? Okay, so the first poem that I said I would read is Crystal, a Fragile Source of Beauty.
Hang on a second. I'm going to share, hang on just a second. So
Sure.
I'm going to share the poems. So hang on, everyone.
Yeah, and for those of you who are just coming in, and Esther, for you too, just so you can see the view that is most helpful for you, in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, I see myself, yes.
Okay, perfect. Everybody else should see a side-by-side view option. And again, if you're not speaking, we ask that you go ahead and mute yourself, because if it detects any sound, it'll think that you're the speaker. So go ahead and mute yourself if you're not speaking. And Esther, thank you for that really profound overview and kind of placing us, orienting us to what's coming next. And just to say, thinking about timing, Esther, for folks who want to ask you questions, it's about 11:23 now. So I don't know how many poems you have for each section, but perhaps
I think I picked 3 for each. Yeah. But if need to be shortened, then I'll read. Maybe I'll start reading 2 for each.
Right. Maybe
Right.
we can do that, Esther. So I have them all on the PowerPoint, and maybe we can start with 2 per section.
But
So
Diane, do you have the picture of the burning synagogue?
we do have that.
Okay, that's the synagogue that I referred to you before when I told you that they sent me out to look what's going on in the city. That synagogue went down totally when I was there some years ago, because they made the documentary about the Jews of Breslau, in which I'm appearing. And there is only a monument, a stone saying the history of that synagogue. There is nothing left. So I will start with the poem, Crystal, a Fragile Source of Beauty. Okay? And I wrote that, obviously, about Kristallnacht. Crystal, a source of beauty. See how it shines, sparkles, reflections of sunlight. A cloud passes. A world has changed. How temporal is this beauty? Kristallnacht, windows smashed by evil seekers, driven by blind hate, property destroyed, goods pilfered, the shattered glass, testimony to seekers of senseless destruction, mindless followers of Hitler's plan. Can broken crystal be made whole, glued? Can lost material goods be forgotten? Can broken souls mend, renew? Can life changed forever start anew? Can hatred be forgotten, forgiven? Can memories of Kristallnacht imbue us with strength, faith? Generations of Jews whose life had been sparkled, who had been builders of culture, science, art, bequeathed their dreams, their hopes, aspirations to new generations, strong and determined. Crystal glass in all its beauty is bound to break. We, the inheritors of dreams, hope's inspiration, will not be broken, will not be destroyed. So that is the first poem about the Shoah. And the second one that I picked was Before There Was Auschwitz. Now, you all know about Auschwitz, and I had the privilege of leading a group of the March of the Living. And if you don't know what it is, your Rabbi will explain it to you. And so I saw, unfortunately, what our families had to go through. But Auschwitz, now let's see, this is on page 11. I'm almost there. Before there was Auschwitz. Before there was Auschwitz, a place of barracks and barbed wire, there was Auschwitz, a town populated by Jews and non-Jews alike. Before there was Auschwitz, the infamous death camp, the worst that humanity has wrought. Nearby, there was the town of Auschwitz, where Jewish life evolved in its own ordinary daily rhythm. Before there was Auschwitz, where life was a living hell, Jews lived in Auschwitz, pursued a happy, tranquil, peaceful life. Before there was Auschwitz, where people became numbers, lost their self-esteem, their identity. There was Auschwitz, where Sarale and Moishele and Rochele and Yosele proudly bore their name. Before there was Auschwitz, where forced labor, cruelty reduced humans to zombies. There was Auschwitz, where tailors and doctors, shoemakers and scholars proudly lived side by side. Before there was Auschwitz, where normalcy meant to perhaps live to see another sunrise, there was Auschwitz, where families joyfully reaffirmed milestones of Jewish life. Before there was Auschwitz, where heart-wrenching, silent, fervent pleas for the life of individuals rose to heaven, there was Auschwitz, where daily prayers united Jews in synagogues established many generations ago. Before there was Auschwitz, where helpless, hapless victims, where cruelty burned their remains a heap of ashes. There was Auschwitz, where Jews established cemeteries to lovingly bury the dead, record the names. The red barracks of Auschwitz still stand, silently bearing witness to evil, to destruction, dehumanization, displacement, intent to break the human spirit. Auschwitz did not succeed. The tyrants annihilated millions, but they did not break our spirit. Scattered in the four corners of the world, in Israel, United States, England, France, even Germany, survivors of Auschwitz, second and third generations, live once again as Jews with names, Jews with identity, not victims of Auschwitz, without victors over Auschwitz. Okay? So I'm going to catch my breath for a second. All right. can we show, I think there is a picture where I'm on a boat going to Israel, to Eretz Israel. This actually belonged to the show. Leave this picture for a minute. This is a cemetery in the village where my husband's family came from. They were the only Jewish family there, but we visited there, and these are my grandchildren who are now a little bit taller than that. And this is the tombstone, the matzivah of my husband's grandfather. So when we were there, they stood there, and the little one just touches it that way. And this is Andy, my son. That's Emma, and that's Benjamin. Okay, let's go to the next. Okay, the next, all right. This is the picture. That's my friend from school in Germany. And that's me over here. And he was a guide, a chaver, who was sort of in charge of all the young people who came from Europe to Eretz Israel. And I have to tell you, from the minute I was on this ship, I forgot everything that happened in Germany. I even forgot to write my mother. She wasn't very happy about it. But it was such a different world for me. So I wanted you to see that. I look pretty happy there. And young, but we won't talk about that. Okay, so the next picture that I wanted to read from you, I'll make an exception. I'll read two more here. First, My Israel on page 29. For me, page 29. My Israel. My Israel. I knew you first as Eretz Israel, the land of our ancestors, the land that I longed for, the land of my dreams. From the lips of my father, instructions of my teachers, the pages of our ancient Bible, I felt that I had encountered you. You were in my prayers, my thoughts, imagination. Magic painted pictures, visions of distant worlds. Majestic giant palm trees etched against the deep blue sky provide shade, a sanctuary for Deborah, our wise judge. The scent of almond blossoms, of citron trees and pomegranates arouse my senses, my yearning to dwell within your borders. No other place on the earth could awaken such images, such passion, such longing, such love, such desire to settle in your midst. Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel, a dream fulfilled, a homeland established, a refuge for long-suffering masses, the ancient promise, solemn vow redeemed. Where did we go astray? Where did we fail in our aspirations to be a light unto the nations, a land of peace, of brotherhood? No more war, no more bloodshed. Hold fast to our dreams, our goals. Israel will yet fulfill its promise, a land of peace, of justice, tranquility. Now, I have to let you know that when I wrote that, I keep on thinking about what's going on in Israel on practically a daily basis. And there is strife between the Arabs and the Israelis, and even fractions amongst the Jews. So the ideal in my mind, it is not, but it is amazing. So I just want you to show you that I'm very honest in what I write and what I think and what I feel. And the second one from that section is From the End of the Earth. Because from the end of the earth, I was in Hebrew. I tell you why I wrote it in Hebrew as well. This is page 34. Okay, I went too far. All right. Because the Aliyah, the people who came to settle in the land in Eretz Israel, was an ongoing operation from the beginning of the century, actually even already in the 19th century, in the 80s, people started coming. And I just imagine the people, going to our land. From the end of the earth, gather our exiles, O Lord, from the end of the earth, from north and south, from east and west, from distant lands of bitter, cruel exile. Let them return, O Lord, to their ancient home. Behold, the silent column of humanity surging, streaming through the sacred soil, wandering over valleys, mountains, crossing deserts, streams, defying heat, harsh winds. They seek an end to their dispersion. Israel awaits the stranger, yearns to embrace its kin, protectively enfolds the tired, draws them into the circle of love. They have come home to Zion. Here they'll take root, will flourish. Grant us peace, O Lord, from now to the end of days. And I want you to know that after I had written it in English, I said, I really have to translate it into Hebrew because it sounds like a tefillah, like a prayer. So in the book, it's in Hebrew, but I'm not going to take the time to read it because I don't know how many people would be able to follow it. But it's in Hebrew and it sounds great. Okay, so the last one from this section, because I do want to leave time for questions, is my cartel. And that's on page 36. Okay, I don't have to. And, okay. I told you already before how much I loved the cartel, the wall, even before I saw it. And we have a picture here. And this is what I have written. My cartel. You had been in my dreams, imagination, at another time, another place, so long ago, when at first my eyes beheld your splendor, your ancient stones gazed upon me, giants rising in a narrow, dusty alley, wisps of green moss breaking the pattern of square, green, uneven hewn rocks, epochs of history, half deeply enfolded before my inner eye. I searched the shapes, contours of majestic, silent, solid rocks, their weathered, sculptured face, unchanged, unmoved, standing firm against stormy winds of history, repulsing waves of enemies, invaders, unyielding in their stoic stance. You have not changed, not aged. You are as when I first beheld your splendor so long ago. With benevolence, you greet the masses, crowding, pushing, swaying frantically in silent, fervent prayer, foreheads leaning on your cool, comforting stones. Eager hands of young and old place tiny scrolls between your crevices. Prayers, promises, notes of thanks. You, mysterious source of hope, strength, witness to our people's glory, weeping at our people's fall. As for me, should my feet not ever again stand near your hollow ground, nor caress you, not even face you, rising from a new, wide open paved square, no longer intimate, so unlike the cuddle of my youth. Your ancient stones, silent as ever, are in my dreams, etched in my heart forever. Now, I wrote this poem because when I went to school in Yerushalayim, I went to the Kotel, there were Arab houses, maybe, I'm not very good in measuring, but quite close to the Kotel. And when the War of Independence was fought and Jordan conquered this area, and then we reconquered it in the Six-Day War in 1967, the Jews, the Israelis, just tore down all these old homes and paved a very, very large square. Those of you who may have been there probably know it looking like this. But for me, when I first saw it in 1967, because by luck we had booked a trip to Israel at the time, I was stunned because it didn't look the same. But I love it anyway. All right, I think I'm going to, okay. So now I just do spirituality because then we have to do some questions if you have it. Okay. I will skip one. I will just do Kol Nidre and open for me the gates of heaven. Kol Nidre, as you all know, is the beginning prayer for Yom Kippur. And when we lived in Plainview, Faye will remember we had a big window by the kitchen and it was in the afternoon and I looked out and I saw what I'm going to describe to you in the poem. So it's Kol Nidre. Oh, I have to get to the page that helps. Okay, Kol Nidre. One more minute and I'm there. Kol Nidre. The day draws to an end in solemn anticipation. Gray, small clouds gather on the blue expanse, congregating on the firmament, shifting, changing formation. In great clusters they assemble, the faithful, the trusting, heeding God's voice and call. Etched against the darkening sky, trembling with foreboding, majestic crowns of trees, golden heads, bending, bowing to and fro, nodding gently, their fervent prayer arrived onward with the silent wind to the creator of all. Daylight stretches slowly, arching from horizon to the earth in protective, warm embrace. The world stands still, a hush enfolds creation. A single voice intones Kol Nidre, haunting, painting, pleading, joined by the mournful multitude. The chant swells, it rises to the master of the universe. So you could see, for me, nature and people are the same. Sometimes it's nature and sometimes it's the trees that thing. And the last one has also to do with Yom Kippur, the end of Yom Kippur, 51. Okay. Now, you know that in the end of Yom Kippur, we say a prayer to leave open the gates of heaven. So this is it, but they don't. A day of prayer, pleading, fasting, a day of meditation, contemplation, memories of years gone by, memories of yesterdays, of joys and sorrows shared. At dusk, the gates of heaven open, Kol Nidre spreads a majestic mantle over the holy congregation with its plaintive, haunting melody. It stirs within us deep emotions, appealing to shared values, conscience. We have sinned, we have transgressed. A community of mourners, united in grief and sorrow, silent recites, Yizkor Elohim et Nishmat. May the Almighty remember the soul of. So many souls to recall, so many souls to mourn. From the lips of each person, the reaffirming words of Kaddish, seeking solace, gaining strength, surrounds support of my community. As a lily hesitantly, mysteriously opens its lovely petals at the breaking of the dawn, reveals its hidden beauty to slowly close with the setting sun. So Yom Kippur, spent in earnest contemplation, bids us a reassuring, thoughtful farewell as darkness spreads, engulfs the world of the assembled holy congregation. Keep open for me the gates of heaven. Do not close them with the sounds of Neilah, the blast of the shofar. Do not shut my path to you, I pray. I think it continues. And let's see this. Oh, that's it. All right. Anyway, I won't read anymore because you don't have too much time. So I'm open for questions. And I want to apologize for sometimes not seeing that well, but I just had some surgery again on my eyes.
So here's the book that before we go into questions, I'm going to stop the screen sharing. This is Esther's book that's available on Amazon. And then people can, let's see, I don't know the best way to organize the questions. Maybe people can just raise their hand or unmute themselves.
Raise their hand would be good.
Yeah.
Just while people are thinking, Esther, I just want to thank you for the tremendous gift of sharing with us. I felt like we were at shul for the past hour, and I just am so moved personally by the
You're quite welcome.
trajectory of your life and your, like Zara spoke at the beginning, of your sensitivity of turning your experience into these words. It's just really majestic. So thank you.
Yes, I really want to repeat what Rabbi Solomon said. This was really moving, and thank you so much for sharing this.
Okay, I'd rather have some questions that I can answer.
Okay.
Does somebody have a question?
Let's see. Let me get the gallery. What they need to unmute themselves if you want to ask a question. So maybe you can unmute yourself or raise your hand if you have a question. I know some people don't have the video on, so maybe there aren't questions. Okay, Lucy has a question.
Hi, Esther. So wonderful. Hi. How did you meet your husband?
How did I meet what?
Your husband.
Oh, on the ship from Haifa to New York. And as I said, it was 16 days because it was not a luxury ship. It was after the war. It was a converted troop ship. And so we had a lot of time to talk, and he had a lot of time to look at me. And I mentioned his gorgeous blue eyes that Faye and even my oldest son and my young son inherited, not my green eyes. So they're very lucky. And so then he went to Colorado to be with his parents, and postage was very inexpensive at the time. And we corresponded every day. And in Hebrew, of course, and my kids never let me burn these letters. I said, you don't even know what we were saying. But every time I put them away, they found them again. So, and then finally he came to New York, and we spent some time together. Then he went back to Colorado, and then that's it. So he came to New York, and we got married here. And actually, my mother was still alive. We got married on the day after New Year's Day, and she died just after Pesach. So and she loved him a lot. So I'm very happy that she met him. So that's how we met. And in a way, yeah. And the other question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
After you got stuck in the U.S., how many times were you able to go back to Israel?
Okay, that's a very good question. At 48 was the War of Independence. And I think the first time that I went back by myself was in 51, 52, because the brother was just above me. You know, there was an older one and Mordechai, we called him Motke, and he was the wunderkind in the family. And he and I had a very, very close relationship. And he ended up in Eretz Israel as well. So he was sent from the kibbutz to study to become a teacher. It's in the family. And then his wife nudged him and she said, let's leave the kibbutz. So I said, I have to go and bring them some stuff because in the kibbutz you have nothing. You leave with the clothing on your body and maybe another outfit or two. So Shimon, that was my husband, Simon, I called him Shimon. We bought linens and and pots and whatever, and we created it in a big crate to get to Haifa. And so I went over to see him and to receive that crate for him. That was the first time that I went back. After that, I don't recall exactly the year, but the most exciting year was 1967, because in July, the 6-Day War, we knew there was tension, but we had bought tickets, Simon and I together, to go to Israel. And then the 6-Day War broke out. But it only took 6 years. But in the United States, they stamped a passport that you can't go. But before they stamped right, it was over. And we went. And that was so exciting because we went to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, and we were among the first ones in a bus to be able to go back to the old city. I can't begin to tell you how moving that was to see the Kotel then, the Western Wall. And just to show you the policy of the Israelis at the time, they said the bus should go to Bethlehem as well, where there were many Arab merchants, and go buy something so that they don't think that we only come as the victor to brag, but to support them. And we did our share, believe me. I think the carpet that I bought is still in existence. I don't remember who got it now, and something else. And when we went back to the hotel, but the bus was filled with Americans, the Arabs who owned that hotel or managed that hotel were not very pleased with us because we came with dusty shoes and we sort of made our footsteps on their carpet. But that was the most exciting of my visits, of all the visits. I mean, I have many more because my nephew got married. First, my niece got married. And I remember that was just before when the Yom Kippur War broke out. And I had not planned on going because I said, how can I go? The school year just started. It was the Yom Kippur War. But my principal in the Hebrew school, he said, Esther, you got to go. I said, I got to go? I go. I couldn't get any plane except for the German one, Lufthansa. All the other airlines were afraid to fly to Israel. So I flew with Lufthansa over Frankfurt. And I saw the soldiers standing there and watching the plane because they knew they had people going to Israel there. And that was also a very exciting plane. And I have to tell you, when I came in 67, the song it was made famous then. You know which song I mean, right, Rabbi?
Yerushalayim Shel Zahav.
And when I came in 73, they had another song. Don't be, I'd say it in English, don't worry, my little girl, this will be the last war. But unfortunately, it wasn't the last war. But it seemed that every time I came, I experienced something extraordinary and brought it back to the United States. Okay, next question.
Any other questions? If you have a question, you're going to need to unmute yourself. Raise your hand and, okay, Emily.
Hi, thank you so much. This was such a wonderful reading and very moving to hear about your life. I wanted to ask you what it was like for you to finally see all your poems in a book, and also how you chose from so many, which ones would be in the book.
Okay. First of all, I want you to know that this is not my first book. I have a book of poem, Nature Eternal, which I have over there. First time I showed to you. And then I had some few years ago, I started to reflect upon my life, and I said, I'm going to write my story because, well, while I was teaching, I always was the drama director, and I didn't like the dramas that they had, the plays, so I wrote my own plays. So, Rabbi, if you need any plays, let me know. So in any case, because my best friend in Germany, she did not leave Germany. She was afraid. I had the guts or the inner, I don't know what to call it, to say, I'm leaving my family and I'll go. So I wrote a book, a novel about my life, which is called Best Friends, a blah, blah, blah that survived Hitler. I have the book right here. And that has been also translated into German. They did it in Germany. And that book is also available at Amazon. Now, as far as to select poems, it was very hard. And I'll tell you a little secret. Since the pandemic started, I'm almost close, maybe 98 poems I wrote in that time. So those were poems. Some of them were funny and had to do with our life here, but others are serious. So, and then since the pandemic, in that minyan, when we started that, or I started to join it, it was on Zoom. And I said, what happened on Shabbat? You don't even, I know they couldn't read the Torah because they never did, because nobody knows how here. But I said, how about the Dvar Torah? Something about the Torah reading. So they said, you do it, Esther. So I've been doing it since then. And this Shabbat, it was yesterday, the man who is in charge, he said, Esther, are you keeping everything that you're writing? I said, sure. Are you going to have another book? I said, you want to be my agent? I mean, it's not that easy to put stuff together into a book. So if anybody wants to volunteer to do it, let me know.
Okay, Mom, there's a question in the chat I'm going to read to you.
Okay.
From my friend Linda. Can you tell more about the kibbutz when you were there?
Okay, I can tell you a lot, and I wrote some about that life in the kibbutz too. I was actually, when I left the school, the Beit Sirot Mizrachi, it was an observant, an Orthodox school. And so they found for me a group of like-minded young people who were about to establish a new kibbutz. We were, they called the Garin, like a kernel, like a small group. And we had to wait to get marching orders. I can talk to you about Zionism because it's not so easy to explain. But that was we were at that time in Mifratz Haifa, a little bit outside from Haifa. And my brother was in Kibbutz Mizrah, a kibbutz of the Shomer Tzair, totally left. The 2 years that we were both in Eretz Israel, we saw each other only once because we were, so Aliyat Noah was sort of responsible for us. And there were the Moraot, the unrest between the Arabs and the Jews and the British. So they only let me travel once. And my brother came from where he was, and we met at an aunt's. Now he was not far from me. So he sent me a letter, and they called me Esti over there. Esti, when our truck goes to Haifa to deliver the milk to Tnuva, because everything was merchant, was bought and then sold together from all the kibbutzim. They'll come and pick you up and you'll come to my kibbutz for a weekend. I wouldn't say no. I came there, and as I say it, he kidnapped me. He didn't let me go back. You got to stay with me. So I went from Mizrahi, which is Orthodox, to Shomer HaTzair, which is totally secular. And I lived in this kibbutz, and then again, which is very important in Zionist history, from Andy to Franz Bonsoir. Hitler, yeah, okay. My son Andy sent the answer. Okay. So anyway, we established kibbutzim quickly overnight. This period is called Choma Migdal. If you want to invite me to talk about Zionism, I can do that too. But anyway, so I can't on regel achad, standing on one foot, to explain to you about the kibbutzim. But I'll gladly do it some other time. Anybody else?
Any other questions? Okay, I think that's it then. Thank you, Esther. On behalf of everyone who came, thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Zara, again, for letting us know about your mom's book, and Rabbi Solomon for your efforts as well. And Esther, this was just a lovely program. And thank you so much for sharing your story and your poems.
Yeah, and I apologize because I have trouble with my eyesight. So when I wear the glasses, it's not always good. When I don't take them off, when I take them off, it's also not. But I think it was okay. I think.
Esther, it was fantastic. We are truly, truly grateful, and I'm so glad that we've.
Virginia Cohen says, "Thank you. You're welcome."
And I want to remind people that it was recorded. So if there are people that you know who weren't able to attend, I believe Rabbi Solomon's going to be on the TBI website. Is that how they access it? The recording?
Yeah, you'll be able to go to the YouTube station for.
Okay, on the YouTube station. Okay, so
and
if you
also thank you to you for creating the slideshow, and Zara for sharing your mom with us, and Esther for reminding us truly our compass as Jews, both our homeland, where we're coming from, despite it all, and God willing, the work that's left to do on our souls and in our communities. So
right. And I meant it. If you want any material, the years that I worked for JNF, I have a lot of stuff. Amazing. And I think, Faye, do you have some of my stuff?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay. Lucy also said thank you. All right.
And I have the carpet. I have the carpet that you got in Israel and the metal tray.
You have what?
I have the carpet that you got from that.
I thought so. Yeah. I knew. Is it hanging somewhere, or are you stepping on it?
We're stepping on it. Sure says we got to clean it. I have it.
Remember, it comes from Bethlehem. That's where I bought it many years ago. Okay, and I can see from the chats that coming in that everybody enjoyed it. So I'm happy that we spent the time together and whatever.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.